And here's the truth, that if you were a kind and loving wife, that kindness and love would not be conditional on whether or not your husband watches porn or what he does or doesn't do that is in the range of normal and common in everyday life. You would focus on all the wonderful things that he does and how he shows up and his qualities as a good man. And you would accept him and have empathy for him because you understand your own humanness. Hello, I'm Karen Seitz, and this is the Happy Wife School. This podcast is for married women to realize that we are responsible for our happiness, that no one and no thing can make us happy, and that our husbands are not the source of our unhappiness. In each episode, I red pill married women to know that we are the problem in our marriages to good men. For the good men, this podcast will wake you up to the realities of your wife's woman ways, to take back the power you've unknowingly given away to her emasculation in a constructive, caring way. Before we dive into today's episode, a couple reminders. My message is meant for common and usual marital issues. My podcast is not intended for abusive, violent, or compulsive behaviors in a marriage that are threatening or dangerous. Also, please take a second to visit my website and learn more about my courses, which offer solutions for married women and good men. You can find the link in the description below. With all that being said, let's get started. Here we go. We'll dive into the Q&A for today. I like to give the reminder that I use these questions as talking points, so topics of discussion, to teach the principles in my message on the Happy Wife School channel. So I haven't talked to the people who have submitted these questions. I don't know both sides of the stories when it involves the marriage and relationship issues. I just want to take what they shared as an interesting window into common everyday issues that we have between women and good men in a marriage. And today we have a smorgasbord of questions, some from women, some from men, that should make for a really great show. So with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and dive in, and we'll start with the first question. I have 5 today that I am going to try to get through. So I'm going to try to keep my answers a little more short and not so long as I go through these. So we'll see how it goes. But the first question ties into the title of the Q&A today. And the question is, I know this is a relationship show, but I just had a daughter and I have been thinking about how to raise her. Do you have any advice on raising girls to someday be happy wives? And thank you so much for, this was actually a man that submitted this question. So thank you so much for writing that in. It's a great question. It's one that I've seen pop up time to time on the live show and in comments on different videos. So I'm going to give you a 30,000 foot view answer to this question. And very simply put, how you raise girls to someday be happy wives potentially is that you want to raise them like you would your sons. You want to raise them like you would your sons. Let me explain. What I mean by that is you want to teach your daughters the same level of responsibility, accountability, consequences for their behaviors, just as you would your sons. And this instills a moral compass and integrity, and teaches young girls to build a relationship with themselves, to feel good about who they are. The issues that I talk about on the channel that we have as women as we grow older and have relationships with men, and especially in what we talk about on this channel with good men, that those behaviors and our woman ways stem from having no relationship with ourselves, not feeling good about who we are, and having no sense of integrity or internal moral compass to guide us. The foundation of happiness is a healthy relationship with yourself that results by feeling good about who you are, by being responsible and accountable to your behaviors, and understanding that your behaviors have consequences. That creates a deep connection with ourselves and a deep sense of meaning and purpose in who we are, so that our happiness comes from within and we are not looking for our happiness externally. And when you raise a young girl to have accountability and responsibility and that her behaviors have consequences, you are also teaching her to learn and grow from life. That you also want your girls to learn from life. Let them fall. Let them get hurt. Let them stumble. Let them pick themselves back up and figure it out. And do not enable their victim stories. You do not want to protect your daughters from getting hurt. You don't want to protect them from heartbreak or loss. You want to instill in them that hurt, heartbreak, and loss are a normal, natural part of life, and that when we embrace hurts and heartbreak and challenges and loss in life to grow and learn, it builds a sense of resilience, a sense of understanding life and approaching life practically and not letting our emotions get the best of us and living an emotional life, but living a life where we run into the challenges of life, take responsibility for our choices and the outcomes of those choices, and grow and learn from them. That's what makes us feel good about ourselves. That's what instills self-value. And it's what teaches your daughters to live in camp, take responsibility. So when she gets her heart broken, when she gets hurt, you want to guide her to look at what were your choices and decisions and what's your part and role in this, and not enabling or helping her create a victim story of what's happened to her. Because that's what makes us feel bad about ourselves and heightens our woman ways as we get older and potentially get married. The other piece of this is that as the man, you need to be the one to parent. You need to take the lead in parenting. That does involve an ongoing fight and battle with your wife, because as women, we are helicopter moms, we are mama bears, and we don't like it when our husbands are teaching discipline and consequences. We perceive it that you are being too harsh, too hard, and we want to protect our kids from that and then end up making you the bad guy. So that is the battle you will be up against. But as a man, you need to be the one to lead in parenting, because as women, we are not good parents. We are not good parents. And the reason for that is we have no skill set and ability to parent ourselves, meaning being accountable and responsible, doing the things we know we need to do even when we don't want to, with a good attitude and positivity. We do what we want when we want to do it. We do not take accountability for our actions and behaviors, and we buck and push away any kind of consequence. So if that's our relationship with ourselves, we have no capacity to teach our daughters or even our sons to have discipline. We can't teach them to take accountability and do the things they need to do and get back up. And then we are also highly protective and are terrified to let our children fall down and get back up and get hurt in life. And that is typically from a selfish place. We're not worried about our children. We're worried about the pain we might have to feel of our kids going out into life and falling down and getting hurt or doing things that they shouldn't do and having to learn and grow from them, because we are pain avoiders. And we do not want to feel that pain within ourselves of our kids figuring life out. So we protect them. And that is a huge detriment to children. So in raising young girls to be resilient, have a relationship with themselves, be responsible and accountable, we highly, highly recommend Love and Logic, which is a parenting book and framework that instills choices, consequences, and taking responsibility. And your wives, and for the women listening, will have a very, very difficult time putting in place Love and Logic, because in order for it to truly work, you have to be able to do it yourself. You can't ask of your kids what you aren't willing to do for yourself. They will rebel. So you have to lead by example. But Love and Logic is the parenting framework that we most often recommend because it does instill choices, consequences, and taking responsibility. And the last piece that I will say on this is, as you raise your daughters and you do your best in instilling responsibility and accountability and teaching her to have a healthy relationship with herself and living in Camp Take Responsibility, she is still going to be a woman. She's still going to have some of these woman ways as she grows older and gets into a relationship or a marriage with a good man. She's always going to be a woman. And what you're hoping is that you're giving her a foundation through what I just shared. You're giving her a foundation to feel good about herself and be emotionally stable, emotionally regulated, and grounded so that she is lower on the spectrum of woman ways, again, being emotionally regulated and stable. And that happens by letting them fall down, stumble, get back up, learning to be resilient, and living in Camp Take Responsibility, looking at their part and role in choices and decisions that contribute to the outcome and circumstances of their lives so that they are not living in Camp Victim, where we are emotionally uncontrolled, dysregulated, and on the higher end of the spectrum in our woman ways. So thank you again so much for that question. I think that's such a great topic, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about that. So getting into question number 2, again, we've got 5 questions today. Number 2, what if you don't feel you are a good man anymore? I was unfaithful to my wife, and there's a lot that goes into that, but ultimately it was my decision. Now, intimacy with my wife post 8 years since the sin is boring. Intimacy happens once a month of that. There have been periods where it's been more than 6 months. I have gotten tired of being rejected, so I don't even try anymore. All of this makes me think I am the problem and that I am not a good man. You talk about all the good men out there, but what about those of us who have made horrible mistakes? So thank you again so much for this question. And you are not alone. And this is a common issue that I see in talking with good men, reading your comments, reading the questions that you send in to me, that it's very difficult for a good man to know he's a good man many times, that is very, very common from different mistakes or who they've been created to be by their wives, and buying into their wives' stories of who they are and how they are the problem, that diminishes a good man's sense of self and his sense of confidence and knowing who he is. So you are not alone, and especially for good men who have been unfaithful and made a mistake and stepped outside the marriage, it's very difficult to overcome based on the dynamics that you're dealing with in your marriage after that mistake. And so we're going to give a little framework around that. So in answering this question, the truth is that good men can make horrible mistakes. Good men can make horrible mistakes. You're not perfect. There's nothing about the phrase good man that means perfect man. It means that your foundation is one of being steady, stable, responsible, hardworking, loving, kind, thoughtful, and you are still human. We are all human. And regardless of being a man or a woman, we are all human, and we all have the capacity, no matter how wonderful of a person we may be or how good of a man you may be, we all have the capacity to make horrible mistakes and choices and decisions, because as humans, we all have shortcomings. We all have flaws. We have errors in judgment and errors in choices, sometimes bigger than others. And that's a part of life, and that's part of being human. So you have to embrace and accept that reality and normalize that you made a big mistake. But you also want to understand why you maybe have made that mistake as a good man, which I'm going to get into here in just a moment. One of the ways that you can know you are a good man is that you have remorse and regret for your mistake, and as this man put in his question, for his sin. So the fact that you have remorse and regret, and that you have sought forgiveness, and that you are trying to be a better man, lets you know you're a good man, and it doesn't mean you're perfect. The other piece of how you can know that you are a good man is the continual punishment that you receive from your wife. That's the lack of sex and intimacy in the marriage, that she will always hold this over your head and withhold and punish you for your transgression. And through that behavior and that punishment of you, that is the gaslighting that's causing you to feel that you are the problem and that you are not a good man, that she will always use this against you to make you feel that you are not a good man and that you did something horrible and unredeemable, because she won't be able to forgive you. What good men also need to understand in this position, if you have been unfaithful, and I've said this many times, I don't condone going outside the marriage. However, in knowing how good men are treated in a marriage, and especially around the withholding of sex, affection, appreciation, kindness, the emasculation, the manipulation, the gaslighting, is that pushes a good man to go outside of his character and morals and integrity, to be unfaithful. And a good man is still responsible for that choice. Like I said, doesn't make it okay or all right. And a good man has a very, very hard time living with that mistake and going outside the marriage, and has a lot of remorse and regret. But you want to understand what happens underneath that choice is it takes so much for some men to be pushed away, punished, emasculated, treated poorly before you are vulnerable and you do go outside the marriage and make that mistake. So you want to know that you were likely unfaithful. Again, I haven't talked to this man. I do not know the story. I'm using this as a talking point to reinforce and elaborate on some of the principles and message I teach on the channel. But it is likely that you were unfaithful because your wife pushed you away through emasculating you, withholding affection, love, kindness, and that left you very lonely and lost and empty and weak in yourself. That then an opportunity came along and you took it, and now you have regret and remorse for that because it's outside of your character and moral system. So you have to know why it happened and seeing it from that angle, so that you don't think there's something fundamentally flawed about you or something horribly wrong with you, that you were unfaithful in your marriage. It is a common mistake that can be made and most likely happened as a good man because of your wife's treatment of you. And knowing that allows you to forgive yourself and understand why it happened, so you can rebuild that strength in yourself for your own sake and no longer feel that you are not a good man or that you have made this horrible, unredeemable mistake. You have to see how your wife pushed you to that point to go outside your morals. And then again, you must forgive yourself and become grounded in knowing yourself as a good man. The sad truth is your wife will never forgive you. As women, even no matter how well-intentioned we are, no matter how much we want to be able to let something like this go, it is incredibly difficult for us in our wiring and how we hold on to hurt and how we were looking for something. The reason a woman pushes a good man away to cheat is it is the ultimate victim story that we can hold in our back pocket and pull out anytime we need to blame our husbands for the problems in the marriage and why we are so unhappy. So women will push a good man to get him to a point where he will cheat, so that she has that ultimate perfect victim story and she can always point the finger out of how he was the problem and how badly he betrayed her and hurt her. And then she never has to look at herself and take any kind of accountability. That's why a woman pushes a good man to cheat, and she will never forgive you for it. So you must forgive yourself and must become grounded in who you are as a good man and understand even in that you make mistakes. So thank you again so much for that question. I'm going to move to the third question now. Like I said earlier, it's a smorgasbord of questions, so they go in different directions and topics, but ones that I just found really interesting. So again, thank you to those who are submitting these wonderful questions. Number 3, how can you be a kind and loving wife after feeling betrayed by your husband's porn use? I know porn use is rather common within and out of marriages today. I want intimacy, love, and respect in my marriage, and definitely fall into what you call my woman ways. Any advice or thoughts? So thank you to this woman. Good for you to ask the question and want to learn and grow from this. And I'm going to answer it just as I would if I was working with one of my female students in a course, and I just tell it straight and directly so that you can have a red pill moment to see the truth in yourself and how you are using this as a woman way to have a victim story about your husband. So also in this, I want to say, I haven't talked to this woman. I don't know the story. I'm not talking about compulsive addictive behavior with porn. I'm just taking this question and using it again as a talking point to talk about porn use being common in a marriage and not talking about addiction or compulsive use. So if you know it's common for men to watch porn, which it is, why do you want to make it a betrayal? That's the question. Why do you want to make porn a betrayal? Especially when we know that it is common. So good men do not watch porn against their wives. It is an outlet. Just as shopping can be for us as women, just as alcohol can be for some people, or emotional eating, or doom scrolling on your phone and on social media. It is an outlet. It is a release. It is a coping mechanism of stress. A good man isn't watching porn to try to betray or hurt his wife. There is a wonderful article that I highly recommend reading, and I will remember hopefully to put it in the comments below. The article is called, it's actually on Redbook magazine, but the article is "I'm happily married and still watch porn." And he says a quote in it, "As a married guy, I can tell you having another emotional relationship is not my fantasy." It's not my fantasy when I watch porn. My fantasy is less emotion and less relationship, and porn is zero relationship. It's an escape from the anxiety and stress of everyday life. And in this question, we're not talking about the morals of watching porn or not watching porn, just seeing it, that it is common and it is a vice, and that we all have vices, that none of us are perfect human beings without any vice of escape or coping with the stressors of everyday life. So I often ask women in this, what vice do you have that you hide or don't want others to know about or have a spotlight on? Because we can be on our high horses and make men wrong around porn when we have vices, let alone our woman ways, that are a million times worse than the vice of a man watching porn from time to time. So that's a question you want to ask yourself. The other piece in this question is, this is just another thing that we can use to make our husbands the bad guy, make them wrong, and weave and create our victim story. So let's assume she's married to a good man. Again, just for the sake of a talking point, she's married to a good man. He watches porn from time to time as a stress outlet and release. And he is just a wonderful husband and is appreciative and thoughtful, a good dad, works hard, good provider. And as women, we will look, what's the thing that I can use to make him wrong, make him the bad guy? And porn is often very much one of those things we look to create that victim story. This is a wonderful example of the stories we create as women and how we want to find that one thing to validate why our husbands are the problem and why we blame them for our unhappiness in the marriage. And here's the truth, that if you were a kind and loving wife, that kindness and love would not be conditional on whether or not your husband watches porn or what he does or doesn't do that is in the range of normal and common in everyday life. You would focus on all the wonderful things that he does and how he shows up and his qualities as a good man. And you would accept him and have empathy for him because you understand your own humanness and your own mistakes or vices that you have. So there's an incongruency here. And the question that a kind, loving wife would not feel betrayed. You tell yourself that I can't be kind and loving because of his porn use, but it's the opposite, that if you were a kind and loving wife, you would not feel betrayed. Telling yourself that you can't be a kind and loving wife because of the porn use, again, is a victim story. Because he does X, Y, and Z, I have to be guarded and walled off and distant in the relationship. That's camp victim. That's putting the power and control outside of yourself and creating a poor me story of how you're betrayed in your marriage. The reason that women, and as women, we feel betrayed by our husbands watching porn, again, not talking about an addiction or compulsive behavior, just a normal vice and outlet. The reason we feel betrayed is because of our own insecurities in ourselves. If we were secure, confident, felt good about ourselves, we would not be threatened by our husbands watching porn, and we would see the reality of it, that it is not an emotional outlet for them. It is a stress outlet and a release without pressure to perform or connect. Just, again, like shopping or scrolling on your phone or binge watching a Netflix show. Porn is just taboo in our culture and something we can make bigger and a bigger problem than what it actually is. I'm not saying it can be a problem for some, but that's not the framework of which we are talking about this. So what you want to do is be looking at yourself, not outward at him. What is it about me, independent of my husband's behaviors, that I'm not a kind, loving wife? And what is it about me and my own insecurities that I can be so threatened and feel betrayed by this? And then you can overcome and accept and not make it a problem when you're secure in yourself and living in camp. Take responsibility and focus on the good things in your marriage. So again, thank you so much for the question. Moving right along, we are going to get into question 4. Again, I have 5 questions today. So question 4, I like this one too. Is it easier to have the dance with a wife who is 10 plus years younger? She has less relationship baggage, less time for negative influences from family, friends, social media, etc. Part 2 of the question, how involved should one's immediate extended family be in a relationship, like resolving conflicts or helping you plan for the future? And part 3 of the question, how early should I introduce Karen's videos to someone I am dating? So thank you for these questions. Gets us off in some interesting directions. So answering the first question in the question, is it easier to have the dance with a wife who is 10 plus years younger? Absolutely, emphatically, no, it is not. I know there's a lot of material out there that says otherwise, but I have to strongly disagree. And coming from a woman who is married to a man who is 9 years older than me. But no, it is a myth and absolutely no truth that a younger woman has less relationship baggage or less negative influences from family, friends, and social media. That is a big, old, giant myth. That the reality is, and thinking of myself, I met Adam when I was 25 and he was 34. And just thinking of myself in my 20s and assuming this is a young man and potentially interested in a woman in her 20s, we are incredibly emotionally immature at that age. I was, and I still had a lot of relationship baggage, even though I hadn't had many relationships. Because here's the thing. We start building our walls as women the very first time that we get hurt, and typically by a man, or at that age, a boy. I was sharing as I was planning for this that my first heartbreak and first time getting really hurt that I can remember, and there were some before this, but this is the one that still stands out, where I know I started to build my walls and have relationship baggage. I was in 5th grade and I had a crush on a boy. His name was Jake. And at that age, you send a friend, hey, go ask him if he likes me, and like if he wants to go out. And I remember my dad always used to tease, where are you guys gonna go? I'm like, Dad, that's not what it means. But I had a friend go ask Jake if he liked me, and I had really bad acne when I was young, starting at like a really young age, like in 5th grade. And he sent my friend back with the message of what did he say? I could connect the dots on her face. And that was the answer and response. And I was so hurt by that. And I started to build my walls and started to protect myself. So it's a myth that we don't have relationship baggage. Again, we're very emotionally immature, and we start collecting our hurts from a young age. I had a huge victim story about my parents and my upbringing, and my dad, who is a wonderful man. You guys have heard me talk about him. He's a retired Master Chief from the Navy, and he did his best to raise me with responsibility and consequences, and instilling a sense of being able to be resilient in life. I rebelled. I was a rebel. I was very rebellious, and I had a huge victim story of how awful my dad was, and just a mean man, and just crushed my self-esteem, and just a huge victim story. So don't be fooled that younger women don't have a giant victim story from a young age. They've been on social media these days since I lucked out. I graduated high school in 2002 and just missed, I didn't even have a cell phone in high school, and missed that social media in my younger years just by the skin of my teeth. But these days, that's their whole life. So it's a myth, and that you want to be with someone your age. I'm very fortunate. Adam and I have worked really hard to make our relationship work, and I wouldn't want it any other way. But the truth is, you want a person that's in your age range, so you go through similar phases and stages in life together and can relate on that level, is my perspective. And if you need any further proof, take a look. I know this is kind of an extreme example, but take a look at Bill Belichick and his young girlfriend who's 24 and what she's doing to him. It's pretty blatant, and she's 24. So I think that's while an extreme example, a good example that a woman is a woman is a woman. Doesn't matter our age. So that's the answer to the first part of the question. For the second part of the question, how involved should one's immediate extended family be in the relationship, like helping to resolve conflicts, planning for the future? Not involved at all. Your family should not be involved at all in the relationship and helping provide advice or resolve conflict. No one has any idea of what a good relationship looks like in general. And you don't want their advice, and you do not want them meddling in your relationship. As a man, you want to shoulder your own burdens and leave the issues and challenges of the relationship to be dealt with privately. I want to talk a little bit about what I call the illusion of family, that we want to believe that family is there to support us and be our biggest fan, but they are often our biggest critics, and they create the most drama in our lives. So you do not want your family in your relationship and in the issues, especially if it's your wife or girlfriend, because what we do as women is we take the relationship issues to our family, to our friends, air our dirty laundry, and build a case against our husbands or partner of why they are the problem. And while we might be able to move forward and move on from the issues and challenges, family don't. And they gossip and they talk about what's going on with everybody amongst each other. And then you've got everybody in your life and judging you and telling you what you should be doing and not making you feel secure and equipped that you can handle your life, which is what you want to be able to do as a good man. And you do not want to enable your wife or partner to build that case against you by going outside of the relationship to try to resolve the issues with family and friends. The last question in this question, how early should I introduce Karen's videos to someone I am dating? Once you've decided that it is a woman you potentially want to commit to, that's when you want to share the videos. It is a 100% foolproof vetting system. Showing a woman that you are interested in to potentially commit to, whether it's a long-term relationship or a marriage, showing my videos is a 100% foolproof vetting process. If she is not interested, if she is hurt, makes you wrong for sharing the videos, then you want to move on immediately and as fast as possible. It means she is not willing to look at herself, and she will blame you for everything. So you can know if you're dating a woman and you share my videos and she has a poor negative reaction, then you know you are going to have a woman on the higher end of the woman ways that I talk about. So it's a vetting process. And if that's the case, you want to move on. If she's open to them and like, oh, this is interesting, I could learn from this, or, oh, I can see myself in that, thank you for sharing this, hit the jackpot. Doesn't mean she's still going to be a woman. She's still going to be a woman, but she's going to be lower on that spectrum and much more emotionally stable and much more geared towards can't take responsibility. And it shows she has a willingness to look at herself and be honest about her behaviors and take accountability for them and be willing to change. So thank you so much for those questions. That was a fun little segue to go off into and supporting young men who are not married and in the dating process. So thank you. And then the last question, number 5. I like all these as I read them, like they're so good. Thank you all so much for sending these in. Number 5, how do I inspire my husband to initiate more? If I don't make blatant moves for intimacy to happen, I'm lucky if he initiates 1 or 2 times a month. I am compassionate and understanding that we are both often tired and have competing schedules, so I try not to pressure him. I know quite often he'll just take care of himself even when I'm home. We've had talks and arguments about this in the past which don't go well, so I don't bring it up anymore. He knows if I had it my way, we'd make it happen every day. I have never shut him down, but it's hard for me to be emotional or take it personally. I often feel left out and lonely and like it's a chore. So good for you. Thank you so much for asking the question and having the courage and braveness to send it in and want to know the answer. I'm going to teach this as if this woman was on with me and she was one of my students, and just being direct in what I teach. Again, I don't know the specifics of this relationship. I haven't talked to this woman. I don't know her husband. So I'm teaching within the principles and framework of the Happy Wife School so that we can all learn from these common everyday issues. Your husband does not want to initiate sex with you because you have emasculated him and pushed him away and made him feel wrong and bad for who he is, and he has lost his attraction to you and is no longer interested in initiating and having sex with you. That's why. But this is a great example, again, of how as women we weave our victim stories. This is a victim story. I often say you cannot believe a married woman's story when she's married to a good man, and we're assuming she's married to a good man, again, teaching from the principles of the channel. You cannot believe a woman's victim story. The truth is that we want what we don't have. And the story is, if I had it my way, we'd have sex every day. I wish I had one of those buttons that was like, eh. No, that's a story. That's a story. That's what we tell ourselves to validate how we're feeling unhappy about this, and poor me, and look at what my husband's doing to me and how awful and horrible it is. So we create a story like that I would have it every day if it was my way. No, that's not true. We want what we don't have. I can promise you, if it was reversed and her husband was in the typical situation of wanting sex with his wife and she was withdrawn and withholding sex, then she would not want it every day. It's just the story we create because we want what we don't have. Men are wired to want to have sex. That's why it's in their top 3 generally of what's most important to them in a marriage. Women are not wired to want to have sex for the sake of having sex and enjoying the experience of sex. There is always a hidden agenda. That's how we can know, in the framework of what I talk about, that this woman's husband is not initiating sex or interested in sex with her because she's pushed him away and emasculated him. And what we have to understand and learn as women is one of the ways we can emasculate a good man is by pressuring him to have sex when he isn't interested and using that against him of what's wrong with you. You're a man, and what's wrong with you that you don't want to have sex as much as I want to have sex? And wanting to have sex every day as a woman is a power tool to control our husbands. And using sex to control them or make them feel bad and wrong that they don't want it. You can know if your husband is regularly taking care of himself, then you can know he has a high sex drive. So you have to look at, what is it about me? And not live in camp victim, but go to camp take responsibility. What is it about me that my husband isn't wanting to have sex with me? How am I showing up? How am I behaving? Well, it's very clear in this. You are using sex as a way to control your husband and make him wrong and bad, and he's not interested. And then you want to look at, what are the other woman ways that you have that I talk about that has caused him to lose his attraction to you because you're treating him poorly. And that's the simple answer to this when we look at it, again, in the framework and the principles of the Happy Wife School. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. If you haven't, go check me out on YouTube, Rumble, and X. You can find the links in the description below to connect with me there. For those women listening who know you are the problem and want a path forward to take responsibility and change your own inner turmoil and unhappiness, I have a course for women called the Happiness Program, which is the solution to the unhealthy relationship you have with yourself and the issues and challenges you have in your life and your marriage. You can find the link in the description below to apply for a free consultation with me. And for the good men listening who want a solution to take back the power you've unknowingly given away to your wife, I have a course for you too called the Marriage Rescue Course for Good Men Only that teaches you how to rebuild your strength and confidence as a good man so that you can navigate the relationship with your wife in a healthy, constructive way. Again, you can find the link in the description below to apply for a free consultation with me. Thank you again so much for listening, and I look forward to talking with you soon.